Grant Denyer now.
It's Grant Denyer.
The gold logie this year. Oh my God, it's Grant Denyer.
And our mum, Shezzy Denyer. She's really crazy.
It's all true.
It's All True, the podcast with Grant and Shezzy Denyer.
Woohoo!
It's all you today, Shezzy.
Oh my God, I am driving this beast today, and I have full respect for you, Grant, because I always bag you about driving this, and it's actually quite complicated.
Oh, and why are you driving this bus today?
Well, I don't know. Why don't you tell us?
Because that's lame if I say where I am. I want you to intro me like a proper radio host professional would.
We do love our intros, don't we, Shez?
Oh, yes, we do. Grant is in LA working in Hollywood, aren't you? You're putting your star down on the footpath already?
Yeah, man, just making my mark in the big smoke. You know, it's about time I stretched my wings and hoping for a big part in the land of LA and celebrities. In fact, I just kicked Lindsay Lohan out of my room just a couple of seconds ago, which is a bit awkward that you called then with the video camera because, whoa, she's crazy.
So you're going to be a big movie star now?
No, just over here having some meetings, mate. You know, I like making television, and this is the biggest place to make television, on the globe. So you come over here and, I've written a few TV shows, so you sort of take it over to the executives over here and you say good day and you say, I'm that little bloke from down under, and they go, oh, I've never heard of you. And that's really good for the confidence.
What's Movember like over there? Are the Mo's pretty strong over that way?
Nothing like that delicious slug that's growing under your nose right now, mate.
More of a caterpillar.
Beautiful. It's a work of art.
I think my moustache is better than yours, George.
Yeah,
I'd believe
Shezzy
it.
Wins.
Okay, so this week is perinatal mental health week, and considering
What does
that
that mean?
considering that I've had a bit of experience with postnatal anxiety, which was after Sailor was born, I suffered from anxiety that I was left undiagnosed for a while, even though I knew that something wasn't right. I kept asking doctors, and I went to a psychologist, and nobody could tell me what was going on because I didn't display, I guess, the usual postnatal depression signs, because I wasn't depressed, and it wasn't all the time. It was just sporadic. So, for instance, I remember walking Sailor in the pram, and somebody was smoking, and their smoke kind of blew into the pram, and I lost my poop. And I don't normally get angry, but I just felt like this person was trying to kill my baby, and fear over my baby getting sick or getting hurt really made me what I call, a bit of a basket case during that period. So I would be normal and I would be happy and I would be enjoying life, and then something would trigger this, like an anxiety attack in me, and I didn't understand it. So this week in Australia is big for trying to, I guess, shine a light on mental health in new parents and in new mums. And we've got two guests coming on today. The first one is Letitia, and she's going to tell us a little bit about her journey, and then we'll talk to Arabella from the Gidget Foundation in Australia, who are trying to help parents navigate this kind of, this period in their lives. So I'll just let Letitia in. Thank you, Letitia, for joining us. This is a big week for perinatal, mental health in Australia. Can you tell us a little bit about what happened to you? What's your story?
Yeah, absolutely. So I had postnatal psychosis with the birth of my first child. So I had a relatively straightforward pregnancy, quite a difficult birth. and I had to have an emergency cesarean. So then about 4 days after that, I started having very strange racing thoughts. I was really quite euphoric, and then I'd suddenly go quite catatonic, and so very strange behaviour. I thought everything was absolutely fine. I thought I was just a little bit overtired, but I couldn't make decisions, couldn't make sense of things. And when the midwife called to check in on me, I told her what was happening, and she realised that that was a little unusual. So I went into hospital, and from there that night, yes, it went quite strange. I thought I was a superhero.
So you were having
wanted to.
You were having like delusions.
Delusions, absolutely. Yes, that is. I can't remember it that well, just
Right.
because really it was really unusual. My husband's spoken a little bit about it since, and I wanted to be on television. I wanted to call up Richard Branson. I just thought, like I said, I was a superhero and I could fly. And then I'd come out of it. It was a bit like I'd come in and out of it. So it was quite short and sharp, the episodes, if you like, but very unusual, very strange communicating with everybody, just not in reality at all. So unfortunately, they did have to put me in an inpatient unit away from my husband and my child for 4 days, which was the scariest thing I have ever had to go through. It was very difficult having a new baby, recovering from surgery. It was really quite full on and very confronting. I'd never had a history of mental health illness before. So it had really come out of the blue, and my husband and my family, they'd also never heard of postnatal psychosis, as I hadn't either. So it was all a shock, but luckily I became quite well. I came out of the psychotic episode, if you like, quite quickly. After 4 days, I knew what was happening around me, could have conversations, could finally learn to breastfeed with my daughter and have visits with her. And then I was able to go home. And from there, it was about trying to find support for what had happened to me, because I was having real difficulties coming to terms with that. And so it was important that I got to seek help.
Sorry,
I'd imagine, for you, like, it's supposed to be the most magical time of your life, and everyone reads about this dreamy connection you're supposed to have with this little human being you've brought into this world. Yet you're being reefed away from everybody and put into, a ward, mental health ward. It must have been tearing you apart. And were you sort of aware when you were having the psychotic episodes that you were having them, or you weren't aware?
I don't think I was properly aware, because it was all so real. It was just how it was, what was happening, because my brain was giving me those messages. So when your brain is telling you things, that's the reality you're facing. So yes, I really did believe those things. The only thing was, because I was coming in and out of it, I would be like, oh, what's happened? Where have I just been? It was like I was going on some adventure in a way, not a very nice adventure, but then I'd come back into the room and I'd be like, oh, how am I here in this hospital bed? So yes, it was very strange. I was coming from real reality and then the reality my brain was creating. But yes, to be a new mother and have that happen, the only thing that I had that I suppose was a slight positive is I was completely in love with my child, with my daughter. I wanted to be with her all the time. And throughout this entire experience, that is what kept bringing me through. So I was so euphoric after the birth. I've had what you think a lot of people have heard of, the baby blues. I've had what's called, that I found out later, is called the baby pinks. So I thought this whole thing was amazing. I didn't need to sleep. I didn't want to sleep. I wanted to spend my whole time with my child and for that reason, it was okay. But then, of course, they had to take her away after about 5 days of being with her for 4 days. Yeah.
God, I can't even.
Wow, baby
imagine.
pinks.
Mm.
Never heard of that term before. So what do they know about what that is?
Well, I was expecting the baby blues. Everyone talks about the baby blues. You know, you're after 3 days, you'll be a bit down. I wasn't. I was completely, as I said, euphoric. This was the best thing that had ever happened to me. I was completely heightened. I was so excited. I was going to start blogs. I was going to take, I don't even know, like all these things I was going to do. And it was all because I'd had this baby and I'd have fits of giggles. I was uncontrolled, hysterically laughing. And it was quite good fun. I was like, oh, wow, if everybody could get a piece of this, it's amazing. It's like being on a total high. I wish I could bottle it up and give it to people. And I don't think you're not quite meant to be that excited after having a cesarean and not sleeping for 4 days. So
can I just ask?
It was a bit of a clue.
Letitia, did you plan? I know you said an emergency cesarean. Did you plan at all in your head that maybe you might not have a natural birth?
Yeah, well, I'd gone to things like calm birthing courses and things. I was quite nervous of a natural birth. I actually didn't really want to go through that. So I wasn't technically upset about having a cesarean, perhaps not in the way it was because it was an emergency and my daughter had to be brought out very quickly. She was under stress. So that sort of changed it from sort of like a planned, couldn't have a planned cesarean. So I had to go through the natural birth and I did everything I could to get myself prepared for that. But in the end, it was all very rushed and quite complex.
Yeah, I wondered, I had an emergency cesarean with Sailor and I had a very specific birth plan that I kind of organised because that's what they tell you to do when it's your first child. And so I thought, well, I'm going to go into hospital and then I'll start contractions and then I'll, get into a bath or have a massage and then the baby will come and, we'll all be happy. And I just wonder if sometimes having that vision in your head, when what actually happens in reality, it doesn't match up, if that can sometimes affect your mental health.
Oh, I think it certainly does in certain circumstances. Friends and colleagues have spoken about how when things haven't gone to quite how they imagined it, that it puts a lot of pressure on the whole experience. Yes, definitely.
How scary it must have been for your husband and for those around you who, I'm looking at Grant smiling because when I went through my postnatal anxiety, I know that he could obviously tell that I was not my usual self, but he didn't quite know, what was going on.
Yes, it absolutely was a real shock for the family and my husband, and if through no fault of their own, they had no idea how to deal with it. They didn't know where to turn. They didn't know where to get support. They didn't know who to ask because they wanted to help desperately. It was such a change. It was so unexpected. To give birth and then 4 days later be in a mental health unit. And they're left holding the baby, like literally, going, what's just happened? And will I ever come back from it? That was a big thing, is how long could this last? What does it mean for us now as a family? And my parents were over from the UK. They only were here for a couple of weeks to welcome their first grandchild. Dad did go home, but Mum had to stay for another 6 weeks because just to make sure we could ride through it and try and get out the other side. But I'm obviously regionally based, so there wasn't much support in the regions, and we were trying to talk, do we shift everybody and go to Sydney? Do we stay in the regions? It was really quite a stressful time, and the money involved in, if you want to stay with your child, you can do that, but it costs a lot of money. So that's a complex situation as well.
I'm sure that now you've done a bit of your own research and you've probably spoken to other mums and and you know how bad that postnatal psychosis can be. Are you feeling quite, fortunate that your, I guess, experience, you've been able to come out the other side and be able to talk about it openly?
Yes, absolutely. Everybody's experience is slightly different, but it is scary for everyone. And I think I was lucky that I had some support networks around me to get me through it. I didn't research. I actually didn't. I was advised not to look into what could happen. It wasn't until I went to have my second child that I was like, right, they told me I could perhaps have it again. It was quite likely. And I knew I'd recovered from it once. So I just had to pray that I could do that again. And so that's when I started researching into what could happen. And I do understand why they did separate me from my child, because of those risks that can be associated with it. And I feel very fortunate that I didn't get it again, and I have the support of my husband and my family. And look, all the clinicians and all the doctors and nurses and psychologists that I saw were incredible, but the system around it is a little broken, I would have to say. Yeah.
I would imagine that this is I have a feeling, I don't know why, that this would happen a bit, but it just would never get picked up. And I'm sure it happens in varying degrees. But many would slip through the system. Was it easy for them to diagnose it in you straight away, or were you one of the lucky ones where they could nail it quite quickly and then tend to it?
Yes, it was quite obvious I was having a psychotic episode.
Right,
I wasn't in reality. So, and because it happened, I think, it was really quite acute. It was very strong. I'd heard they hadn't seen anybody quite in that state before. So mine was relatively obvious and quick to diagnose, I believe. Yes.
Why do they separate you from your child? What are the potential reasons or dangers there?
Yeah, it's the risk I could pose to myself or my child. Yes, because when you're having a psychotic episode, you obviously don't really know what's right from wrong, what's reality and not. So yes, there can be a risk there that you would do some harm. Yes.
Letitia, what's your message for mums to be? Because I've even got a few mates who are, already starting to try for kids. I'm in the early 20s, but, they do hear these kinds of stories and whatnot. And I wouldn't say it all frightens people, but it's definitely a question in their mind, oh, wow, what would happen if this happens to me? What's your message to those people trying?
And look, what happened to me is rare. It's not common. And I think now that people are talking about it, things like Perinatal Mental Health Week are perfect for that. So people can start recognizing the signs, the symptoms. They start understanding where to get help and where to get help quickly, and help that suits them. So if it's a psychologist they want to talk to, or they need to go to hospital, this was it was an emergency situation, and it happened very quickly. And I was lucky that I spoke to a midwife that day, and she recognized that something unusual was happening. I think it's about 1 to 2 in every 1,000 births that what happened to me could happen to. So it is, and often people have a family history, so it's important to talk about that too. What's happened in the past may also occur in the future. I didn't have any family history that I'm aware of. But again, people did used to hide it, and that's the risk there. You need to talk about it. You need to be open about it. You do need to understand that there are risks to having a child, both physically and mentally, and just be as educated as you can and prepared, and watch out for the signs.
Thank you, Letitia. Thank you so much for sharing your story. It's really, really, it's lovely to see your smiling face, and it's really, I'm super grateful that we have people like you who are willing to, to talk about what's happened to them, because I think that every time we share a story like this, we're helping somebody else. So thank you. Thank you for your time.
No.
Thank you,
You're
Letitia.
most welcome.
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you. Bye.
I've got another person to chat to now, if I can try and work out how to
So far, you're steering the ship pretty well, Shezzy. Very impressed.
I don't know.
We've only bounced off 2 icebergs so far. We're going good.
I don't know. I feel like I'm trembling.
No, doing well.
So we'll connect now with Arabella from the Gidget Foundation, and hopefully, hi, Arabella, can you hear us?
Hi, yes, I can. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. I'm steering the ship here today, so it's a bit bumpy. Grant's in LA and George is in Rockhampton. So we're really spread out. Thank you for joining us. It's a big week for you guys this week. Can you tell us a little bit about what's happening and what you've been doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So Perinatal Mental Health Week is a chance for us to come together and celebrate and mark the importance of the experiences that vulnerable parents might go through. And Perinatal Mental Health Week is a week where we bring together 46 organisations Australia-wide to really be united and have a powerful voice around supporting Australian families and what they might be going through.
It's something that's very close to my heart, hence I wanted to do this episode. I suffered from postnatal anxiety that went undiagnosed for a while. I kind of wasn't pigeonholed. I kept going to the doctors and asking and saying something's not quite right when I first had my first baby. And I would do all the mental health checks and the tests, and it would always come back that there was nothing wrong. And I knew in my heart that, you know, that I wasn't acting normal, and Grant will back me up there. I was normal a lot of the time, but then sometimes I'd fly into rage, or I'd have these, anxious attacks. So this is something that I'm really happy to be talking about and to shine a light on this kind of stuff, because everybody's experience is so different. And that was the one thing that I found when I went through it, that there was no real research or no news stories about people who were going through similar things like I was. And thank you for everything that you've been doing with the Gidget Foundation. How prevalent is mental health issues in that perinatal period?
Yeah, so first of all, I guess to clarify, the perinatal period is from conception through to 1 year postpartum. And we know that every single year, 100,000 Australians will be diagnosed with this illness. And that's 100,000 new Australians every year. So it's a really perpetuating number. We also know that 1 in 5 new mums and 1 in 10 new dads will be diagnosed. But there's so many people that go undiagnosed who are feeling that kind of fear and that shame, and they're in denial about what it is that they're experiencing. So we know that the numbers are far more prevalent than what we actually record. And we know that the cost to Australia is actually really significant. We know that over the lifespan, there's a cost of $7.2 billion through lack of productivity, costs on the health system, costs on wellbeing, those sorts of things. So it is really significant, and we do need communities and families, governments and organisations to get behind this issue.
Look, for us, for us to speak personally about our situation, I certainly don't want to ever try and represent anyone other than us. It was a pretty scary period, to be honest. As a new dad, and thinking that maybe this was the new norm. I could see Shezzy was different, and it was scary because I didn't know if it was now a permanent situation, or if there was something that, that I was doing wrong, or I was missing, or I didn't know how to help. I was lost. I didn't have the tools, the equipment, or means to know. I didn't even know what it was, let alone what to do about it. It was, a confronting period for us. And we've only really found the language to talk about it much later in life. We didn't even have the terms or the words during the period or the 5 years after it. It's only sort of 10 years on that we can now give it a name and understand the various stages of it. It's a very overwhelming experience. And yeah, I don't know why anybody didn't sort of catch it earlier, but what do you encourage? How should people respond? What should they look for?
Yeah, look, we would really encourage people to start talking. We often find that when we're feeling disconnected, we find it so hard to find a way to become connected again. And they are little steps that can create the bigger change. We know that when people have a baby, I've got 11-year-old twins now, but, you know, when I had my two, we were living in London and very isolated from family, no friends that had babies. And the reality is that it is an enormous adjustment. It's an incredible challenge. And yet it's meant to be this, you know, really wonderful, happy, exciting, beautiful time. But in actual fact, it's a complete identity shift. And you go from, you know, being one person who looks after yourself and is responsible for your own actions and behaviors and everything else, to being suddenly responsible for another human in the world. And it is a really big shift. And so we would really encourage people to talk wherever they can to their village, be that family, friends, medical professionals, whoever they feel, you know, comfortable with chatting to about it. And that's the first step. From there, it's really important to go to a GP and to share with them how you're feeling. It doesn't necessarily mean you need to be on medication or seeing a psychologist, but certainly those things can help. But getting some really good understanding of whether you've got a diagnosis or not, and if not, keeping on pressing with those questions as Chessie experienced, you know, asking and saying, you know, I just don't feel right. Because if those symptoms last for longer than 2 weeks, we know that people are experiencing things that are not normal. And so it's really important to seek that support, go to the GP, and then you can get a referral for a mental health care plan and get some support from there.
Are there some factors that can increase the chances of this happening, like external influences? You mentioned having no family support around. That was definitely the case for us. You know, we had family. Mine were in Queensland. Chessie's were in Bathurst. I would travel away for work, so she was often there on her own. Are things like that impacting factors?
Yeah, absolutely. So we know that there's quite a few that can impact things. Family history of mental ill health can be one, or even history yourself of mental ill health. Any kind of past traumas or stressful experiences, relationship difficulties, social isolation, anything where you were kind of compromised in your own attachment from your own parents that might kind of lead through to feeling those feelings, kind of replicating or perpetuating. Quite often there can be conception difficulties that have caused some, you know, extreme stresses, twins and multiples, financial difficulties, moving house, anything that shifts your routine and your stability. And then, you know, of course, we know that other specific groups will experience this more so. So, for example, people who might face discrimination and an additional lack of support base, like LGBTQI+, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander, CALD communities, that sort of thing. So there's definitely vulnerabilities that can increase your risk. Equally, though, there are strengths that you can use to perpetuate that support as well.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt there. There's a bit of a delay. In our experience, I had quite a traumatic birth compared to what I was picturing. How common is that? Because back, you know, when Sailor was born, that's 11 years ago, people didn't talk about birth trauma. You know, you just kind of got on with it. But I've heard it a bit more now. So can that impact people and their mental health, do you feel, when they're, you know, new parents?
Yeah, absolutely. Birth trauma is a really big indicator that this could be an issue that people would face thereafter, because they often will relive that trauma over and over and over again in their mind, and they'll worry about the impact it had on their partner or their baby, and that will then perpetuate that feeling of the lack of bonding. And because there's so much focus on this beautiful, gorgeous, amazing, delightful baby, but there's actually no validation of how, you know, the physical pain that mum's gone through, and then how that has transferred into mental pain as well. But it's also hormonal as well. You know, we can't forget that hormones are a physical change and a physical enabler quite often with this illness as well. So whilst there are those vulnerabilities that I mentioned earlier, there are also some chemical, physical changes that can occur.
You said it can happen to men as well, yet we don't birth the child. We don't have those hormones. You know, it seems incredible that we could even be affected. Like it almost doesn't make sense.
No, it probably seems like that at the outset, but absolutely men can be affected, and it's just as much an adjustment for men as it is for women, in the sense that, you know, men feel that level of responsibility even more so than ever before, and they always want to be the solutions provider, you know. And when you don't have solutions because you don't understand the problem, it can be pretty frustrating. And we do see it manifest in different ways with men. You know, we tend to find men get very frustrated very easily, and they might turn to, you know, things that might make them feel like they're getting better, i.e. self-medicating, but I often will find that just, again, really drives home the issues further. So absolutely men can experience this illness. And in fact, we know that if we can support men better, they will then in turn support women better too. So by working for both partners, it's really important.
Yeah, I made out there like it was surprising, but I must admit, I think I had something exactly like what you're talking about. Now, it feels silly as a man to say that you do have that, because I don't want to undermine Shezzy's struggles, because they were very different and they were very real. And you feel terrible as a man going, I don't quite feel right. Yet, you know, we're not as exhausted, we're not as tired, we're not having to feed the baby as much. Yeah, we might be changing and we're doing the odd jobs, but we're doing 1/10 of the workload. Yet, so you don't feel like you have the right to say, I don't think I'm okay. I don't think I'm quite right here. So you do internalize that. There's so many aspects to it. It makes it quite a complex struggle.
Absolutely. And look, that's why we would really recommend at the Gidget Foundation, we offer up to 20 free clinical psychological sessions with perinatal mental health specialists. And I think talking through these issues, coming up with coping strategies, looking at ways to self-regulate and understand what it is that you're going through, and looking at what those different factors are that are affecting, you know, your family, it's really powerful. And showing that vulnerability to your partner is really powerful. And the other thing is, why spend a day longer than you need to feeling like rubbish? You know, so many people go on for years and months feeling terrible. And in actual fact, if they sort out the support that they need, their journey to be living a fulfilled and happy life would be that much shorter, that they wouldn't have to go through quite as much, you know, pain and suffering and for so long. So we would really advocate for people to get the support that they need if they are feeling those things.
I think George is only very young, our co-host, and I think by the time George goes to have some children, hopefully these kinds of conversations will make it, you know, a lot easier to get help and to talk about these things. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's cool with Grant and Shezzy. I get roped into conversations that are very, very adult, and I'm only 21 and I'm quite immature, but they're maturing me and getting me ready for anything in life, whatever it throws at me. So, no, it's really good. Is there a common age that people kind of experience this kind of these symptoms and signs, or is it across the board?
Look, it is across the board. It doesn't discriminate in that it can affect anyone at any point in time, and it can affect anyone on their first, second, third, fourth, or sixth baby for that matter. You might get through baby one and everything's fine and dandy, and then it hits for baby two. So there isn't a particular age or stage, but there's certainly, for example, people who might have gone through IVF or assisted reproduction support are more likely to experience it. So, and generally those people are older. And they're probably less aware of the issues surrounding it. And I think, to your point, that you're young and getting the education now, that's actually really key, because what we need to do is we need to make sure that when people are focused on having a baby, they're not just focused on whether they've got the right cot and the right pram and, what type of birthing plan they've got, but whether they've actually thought through how they're going to manage their emotional state when they're challenged at every opportunity. And I think being as prepared as we can and having that kind of emotional resilience, which we all just assume is there, but we actually, as a generation, we haven't necessarily learnt that. It's something that I think we need to bring to the fore and actively choose to do. At school we learn maths and history and we go and do PE, but having the ability to really understand how to manage frustration, how to deal with anger, how to deal with when you're feeling sad, and what kind of things that you can do to kind of regulate your brain is so important. So I think it's great that they're telling you this and getting you up to speed on what might happen in the future.
It is good.
Yeah, it is. Like year 10, 11, 12, you've already got mates who are actually starting a family and entering the real world and moving on from school and have no real life lessons. So do you think this is something that we could bring into schools? Because I know I certainly didn't have it where I went.
Yeah, look, it's an interesting one. I think the issues of mental health are obviously so much more discussed these days generally. I think when we consider perinatal mental health, it is, as I mentioned, a time of this kind of meant to be great happiness. I think it's about reframing our expectations, because we've all got these huge expectations around having a family and having a baby. And I don't think it's a bad thing to have those great expectations, but it's just good to measure it. Whether we brought that into schools, I don't know that we need to talk necessarily about what it's like to have a baby or have a family, but I think it's more about, if we brought into schools, the importance of emotional regulation and how we go about that and how we, visualize and manage that in ourselves. I think that's actually the really critical thing.
It's very interesting. I've got a lot of friends who have got very successful careers. They've tried a number of them for many years to have babies, and they just kind of had their mind on that end prize, and then they finally fall pregnant. A number of them have had, depression while they've been pregnant, which they were not expecting. And then a few of them have had quite significant postnatal depression because of a number of different factors. It's not what they thought it would be. They were quite successful career women, and they, had everything that they control, and all of a sudden they have this child who they, that there is no control with kids. It can be very hectic and you're never going to win. They're always going to win. And I think sometimes we just put so much pressure on ourselves. And I know that these kinds of conversations and the work that you're doing and all the online resources are just a godsend to so many parents, and especially older mums that I talk with a lot. So thank you for everything that you're doing, and we fully encourage you. And hopefully these conversations will help a few more mums, and we'll continue to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess to that point, we have lots of really good fact sheets on our website that people can go to for those resources that give them a whole lot of information that they can refer to, and then potentially, go and see a GP and go from there. But with COVID, there's been an awful lot of isolation, but an also awful lot of babies being born. And we have seen the statistics increase. So we're here to help, and we're driven and passionate about this issue. And thank you so much for shining a light on it.
Thank you. Just give us your website so that, and we'll put it up in our brief as well.
So it's gidgetfoundation.org.au.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for your time, Arabella. I know that you're really busy this week, so I appreciate it.
It's all good. It's a delight. Thanks so much for including us. Really appreciate it.
Keep up the good work.
Thanks, Arabella.
See you guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
That's heavy. That's really heavy.
It is heavy, but it's so different to when we went through it. I just remember,
it's
you couldn't.
It's not like.
Sorry.
It's not like our parents were passing any of that information down either. Our parents' generation internalized a lot of struggle. You never spoke out loud. You didn't show weakness. You didn't admit, fault or flaw or struggle. Maybe the duty's got to start with us to start making it a normal part of, your upbringing and understanding of what it's like bringing a person into this world. Yeah. It was a hell of a time for us.
It was, because it's really scary. And I remember, 3 days in of being home, and I had, the really bad scar, and I had problems with my urethra, and George is Googling what urethra is because of
no idea.
the bad birth. And I just remember thinking, oh my God, I have to look after this baby. Like, I am solely responsible for this little person, his well-being for 18 years. I'm never going to get a break for 18 years. Grant's like, not
solely responsible. Thank you very much. There's fucking 4 of us in this.
No, but that's like, you just, I don't know, the emotional weight, can feel unbearable. And we didn't have the internet like we do now. You couldn't just jump online and search up, postnatal, like there wasn't even such a thing as postnatal anxiety. So, and I'm sure it's underreported now. But George, you've got a lot to look forward to.
Yeah. How do you guys feel though? Kind of like hearing the stories today and the stats, and is it hard to hear that, or are you kind of at the point where we're happy to have this open conversation and move forward?
I thought I reckon it's
pretty good. Bit triggering, to be honest. I reckon it's it was a bit of a reminder of how difficult it actually was, and I reckon it took us quite a few years to come out of it. If I'm honest, I don't think it was an overnight thing. I don't think it was a few weeks. I don't think it was a few months. I think it was a few years.
Yeah, it was.
That we were stuck in this state without a name. We didn't know what it was. We didn't know it was a condition. It had no title. It was just the way things were. And I was terrified for our future. I was terrified for Shez. I was terrified because you felt so helpless. It was, there were it was hard. It was real hard.
Yeah, and I carried, a lot of guilt for a long time. I'm getting quite teary now, but just you question, could I have done something better? Did it, affect the bond between me and my child? And, as a mum, you always have mum guilt. But, listening to other people tell their stories while they're very different to mine, I feel a lot of empathy for those people going through that period, because you put so much pressure on yourself, and it's such a hard time anyway. And you want to do right by your child, and it's difficult. But I wish that, places like the Gidget Foundation and I wish that, that they existed when I was going through it, but there was no discussion of stuff like this. And I even remember a few years back when I came out talking about my story to try and help others, and somebody stopped me in a fruit shop and they said, "Oh, I wouldn't be talking about that if I was you. Like, it's making you look like you're mental." And that really upset me, because I thought I want to tell my story so that I can help others. But, there's always this judgment, and God, that was piercing. Yeah, it's just.
Sorry, I just farted.
Oh. I think I just got a message. Yeah, it's important, and I'm glad that we're doing it. But we need to.
Yeah, and let's not. Also, we don't want to, scare you either. There's so many magical experiences, and let's hope that this doesn't happen to you. But if it does, then there is a fast way to fix it, and you're not alone.
Yeah, absolutely. And also to all the people who have been through it, talking about it helps others. So let's keep talking about it. Now, if I hit a sound effect, can we? Is this the one where we go? Hold on.
Oh, you're the pro, mate.
Was that the twinkly twinklys, a little transition?
Oh, Grant, how is LA?
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, it's pretty crazy being here. When you grow up in television, you look up to everybody that all those favorite shows you grew up watching are all made here and all the people who are in them are walking down the street. So it's pretty crazy. Yeah.
Who have you seen?
At the moment, not a lot of people, a few people from a distance.
Right.
But I've just been in a lot of meetings. So it's not like I've gone down like the Hollywood Walk of Fame and like Arnold Schwarzenegger's gone past yet. I haven't gone to all the haunts where they all hang out.
Yeah,
I'm right across the road from the Comedy Store. So there's a lot of like big A-list comedians who go in there trying out their new gear before they go out on, big stadium tours. So, like the likes of Chris Rock will just rock up, tonight and just try out a secret new set. Chateau Marmont is just across the road and up a couple of doors. That's where all the celebs like to hang out. So I'm going to lob in there in the next couple of days and see if I can see anyone. So that's a place where famously, this is why I said Lindsay Lohan at the start, is because she stayed there and she stayed there for quite a while. And she had a room service bill that was $46,000 and she just walked off on it and never paid it.
Oh, my God. How long?
Yeah.
That's like quality room service. What would you be getting in that?
There's a few chips in that. There's a few chips and Coronas, like $46,000. And oh man, so it's there's just lots of cool rock star stories. But anytime you jump in a cab, I had a cab to dinner last night, and I was asking the cabbie, "Do you have anyone famous?" He goes, "Oh, I had Jessica Simpson here in the car the other night, and I drove them to their house, and their driveway was longer than Sunset Boulevard. They're living in an enormous mansion." And so you get everywhere you go, everyone's got like a rock star, movie star story, which is pretty awesome.
So I think we've got a little
Jesse.
audio clip here, if I can work out how to play it. Was this from today, Grant?
Oh, this is when I was coming back from a meeting. Just in an Uber, driving down Hollywood Boulevard in Hollywood.
All right.
Yeah, this is my Uber driver.
I'm making a U-turn.
Yeah, you make the U-turn.
On Hollywood Boulevard.
So we're on Hollywood Boulevard. What's your name?
My name's Miguel.
Miguel's my man. He's driving. He's showing me where my poster's going to be on the wall.
Might be over there.
He's still looking for it.
We're just trying to figure out where we're going to put it at.
I'm going to stick a business card on the wall.
Maybe right up there, the Chinese theater up there.
Yeah.
Just boom.
It'd look good, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So you recognise me from Australia, don't you, Miguel?
You're the man. Yeah.
What shows do I host?
Let me see. Family Feud. Let me see.
Oh my God, you were listening.
Dancing with the Stars.
Hang on, now you make me sound like a wanker for telling you all the shows I work on. What's it like being an Uber in LA, man? Do you pick up famous people?
You know what? Yeah, you do. You pick up famous people. You pick a lot of like famous people on TikTok too. Like a lot of young people. I picked up two guys the other day. Each of them had 5 million followers on TikTok each.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm like, this is crazy.
Damn.
You guys could start a whole movement. And they was like, we are. We are the movement. We're happening.
Are people pretty full on in LA, like pretty direct, pretty confident, in themselves? Like it's got that vibe. Like everyone's going to be famous. Everyone's going places.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everybody comes here with just a dream and a dedication, but also with faith, and they don't let that go. I like to say this. This is a place where all the cool kids. If you were cool wherever you were from, this is where you're coming to, and if you wanted to be cool, this is where you're going to be at as well. But they come here, you meet them, and you see the determination in their eyes just to make it, and then you're surrounded by so much creativity on a daily basis. Every time you step out of your house, you're getting smacked with a new story. So LA is a very beautiful place, and the people that come here are very determined to get their dream alive.
Like those annoying little Aussie bastards who come over here. Those cocky little... Hey man, on a serious note, hang on, we're going past In-N-Out Burger, which is my favourite burger in the world.
You smell it?
God damn, it's good. It's so busy. Like the queue is so huge. Oh my God, it's divine. I literally could lick that sign if I didn't want COVID. Hey man, on a serious note, walking around, there is a lot of homelessness.
Yep. Mm-hmm. There is a lot of homelessness. They're trying to do something about it. But I say this is probably the best place to be homeless.
Beverly Hills is a pretty good place to be homeless.
Just set up a tent, until they move you. But still, California, just in general, they are here. The city is doing some good things that are going unnoticed. But it's going to take some time. Yeah. It's going to take some time.
Yeah, I certainly hope they help a lot of people out.
Yeah.
Falling on hard times in America feels like it's a very difficult thing to get out of.
Mm-hmm. It is, obviously, with the pandemic, I was in Dubai, and I currently live here now, but LA was going through a lot, but you can still see the residue of what happened not too long ago. The effects of it is still in motion, and you do talk to a lot of people, and even when I meet a homeless guy, or whether I'm just buying them something to eat or just, asking them, giving some questions or giving them some money or something like that, and I usually say, what's your story? And they say, man, either they lost their house, they lost their wife, their house, and everything that they had, or they just choose to live this way because they don't want to pay no more rent.
Yeah.
But people are getting really creative, and people come here to create in LA. Yeah. So
Hey Miguel, why is it all Americans can talk so well? It's like every single person is made for television. If I asked anyone in Australia to answer these questions, we'd be like, I don't know. But you guys you're so good at talking.
I don't know, man. I mean, I think I came to LA just to get away from Philadelphia. I didn't want to shovel no more snow, and you find yourself around some influential people on a daily basis, and you have to up the ante, and you're speaking, and sometimes you're always in front of a camera or behind it with friends and family that are just here creating, right? So you have to be on point. But
did you ever want to be an actor?
What's interesting, man, I did actually 4 national commercials. I worked with Kobe Bryant in a Nike commercial. I did another Nike, McDonald's, Nissan.
These are big ads, man, for big companies.
Yeah. So I just getting back. I think right now I'm just working on my body, and I did start a food vlogging channel, so I'm doing that. Just tasting food all over LA, eating some weird stuff too that's here that no one knows about.
Jesus.
So just getting my foot in the door again, and I was gone from LA for about 6 years, so I'm excited to be back, see what happens.
Miguel, your body's looking good, man. Not only that, you smell good.
Really?
Yeah, you're the whole package. So thanks for sharing your insights with us, man. As a local, I really appreciate that.
It's all love, and I look forward, man. We need to there's a couple things. We need to get you here and the family. We need all your followers to continue to watch you and subscribe to the podcast, right?
Yeah.
And then I just want to be there whenever the billboard goes up. That's it. That's it.
Will you cut the ribbon with me? We'll cut the ribbon together. Well, you know how those influencers, they had 5 million followers before. You know how many I have?
Right, how many?
5 kangaroos.
5 kangaroos. Yeah. You got any baby ones I can hold?
Soon it'll be 6. Righto, mate. Love you to chat.
Man, appreciate you.
You're a good man.
God bless.
Oh my
Wow.
God.
just Uber chats in LA.
That's so cool.
The LA Miguel is way more easy to understand than the Australian Miguel.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Exactly.
Are they obsessed with you with kangaroos? Like when you're talking to people, I just remember that from years ago. They had this vision, if they hadn't been to Australia, where we all ride kangaroos.
Well, he brought up reason why he said that then was we were chatting earlier and he's going, hey man, what's with the kangaroos down there? He goes, why are they all so muscly? Because you know those videos that have been popping up recently of these really jacked kangaroos that got massive shoulders on them and they just look like they've been pressing iron like all day for a year. He goes, what's with that?
No. His AirPods just fell out.
He got very passionate talking about the kangaroos and they literally flew out of his ears. Oh, we're back.
They flew out at the same time. He goes, yeah, why are they? And then he wanted to talk about that video of the bloke that punched the kangaroo in the face. Do you remember?
Oh, yeah.
His dog was being attacked. And so the kangaroo had his dog in a headlock. So he goes up to the kangaroo and the kangaroo wants to fight him, so he just punched him in the head. And the kangaroo had that real stunned look on his face, like, hey, man, what are you doing? He thought that was amazing. But he thinks that's what it's like just down the main street. Like we're literally punching kangaroos out of the way to get into Coles or Woolies.
No wonder they think we're crazy.
Can you try and sneak onto the set of like a Tonight Show and just be like, I don't know, in the background where like they've got the cities behind them and just poke your head out behind, like sneak in, do something like that. That's the next cross we should do.
Just run in nude and just grind up on, I don't know, James Corden or something like that while he's recording his, late show. I went past his lot, his Warner Brothers lot today, so like I could see all the crowd lining up ready to go in to sort of do some filming. So I was like, oh, maybe I should just sneak in there with like a fake mustache on, kind of like what you're trying to pull off now.
But way thicker.
And then just, storm the stage.
If anyone can do it and get away with it, it's going to be Australia's very own Grant Denyer, I feel.
And then just yell, as I'm running away, just yell out, do you know who I am? I'm Larry Emder.
Stitch up.
Carl Stefanovic. So
it's a crazy place.
And you're off to Baja?
You're off to Mexico in a couple of days to go down just there. There's an off-road, the world's biggest off-road car races down there. So going into Mexico to try not to get kidnapped by drug cartels. Man.
Well,
sounds like they're hacking in already.
Yeah. I look forward to interviewing you when that happens. Thanks for.
I'm worried about the cartel calling shares and going, we've got you, man, and give us $100,000, and she'll be like, you know what, just keep him.
Yeah. I would not do that. I'd go, is that 100,000 Australian dollars or 100,000 US? Because pesos. All right, we better let you go because I know it's late at night over there. So, it was a really nice episode, and hopefully I've actually pressed record on all of this.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
Oh, that would be funny. Oh, thanks, everybody.
Right. See you, kids. I'll bring you back some souvenirs.
Yes, please.
Bring me back one of those burgers from that burger joint you were talking about.
Mine In-N-Out burger is the goods. Big,
Steal the sign.
Juicy. Yeah, okay. I'll fit that in my overhead luggage for you. The thing was only 3 stories tall.
Okay.
There's so much preservatives in those burger buns, it'll probably last till you get home too.
Yeah, actually, that's a good burger. Wish we had them in Australia. Yeah.
Well, there's a business idea. All right.
From 3 corners of the globe.
Woo-hoo!
See you, lovers.
We're going international.
Righto.
Bye.
It's All True, the podcast with Grant and Shezzy Denyer.
Bye bye.